All right. So we will go ahead and get started. It is 7 o'clock. Can everybody hear me okay? Just a quick check-in. Thanks,
Yes.
Casey. Thanks, DJ. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be using Nearpod, which if you're an educator or if you've got students, you may have heard of that. You don't need a login or anything. You just need to click on the link and then it'll allow you access to the slides that we're using today. It'll also allow you to type right into the slides themselves rather than having to just use Zoom chat. So if you'd like to join us there, if not, I'll be posting the slides. I'll be putting them on my screen and sharing my screen so you can just follow along there. So whatever is your best learning style, you know you best. But the first slide on Nearpod, and I'll go ahead and share my screen so we can get that going. Maybe. Where did it go? Okay. Tell us a little bit about you. So one, we love to hear who is serving on our school community councils, how long have you been on your school community council, and where are you serving? And you can put that into the chat, or you could put it here on Nearpod. It will post right there on the screen. Give it a second. We're still getting people coming into the room. Be a good chance to let them in. So these slides are also, these are at your own pace, so you can follow along as we go on. But I know sometimes when I'm watching a Zoom or something that it'll go too fast for me. And I won't be able to catch all the information. So this way you can have on your own screen, you can go a little bit slower, you can go back if you have a question. So on the sides are the little blue arrows that you can click through if you need any help with that. Welcome, Melissa. So good to have you. Shout out to those middle school teachers. I used to be a middle school teacher. It's the best. Debbie, thank you for joining us from City Academy in Salt Lake. This is your second year. Congrats. That's awesome. Someone from Sprucewood. Nice. Okay, I'm gonna just, while you guys are all introducing yourselves, my name is Elise Newey and I'm a former public educator. I taught middle school in New York and in Texas. And now I'm working at the state Board of Education, and I'm in the School Children's Trust section, and I am just so happy to be here. I am over training, so you'll probably hear my voice quite a bit more throughout the year. So I'm just really excited to be here and to be doing this job and getting to know you all. And I have two amazing colleagues that I'm also going to introduce. Natalie, do you want to introduce yourself? Sorry, put you on the spot.
I had to figure out where I was. Hi, I'm Natalie Gordon. I have been working with the School Children's Trust section for about 6 years. And one of my favorite things to do is to get to know council members and help them be successful. So I'm glad you're all here.
Thanks so much, Natalie. And we also have Paula Plant, our fearless leader. You have a second, Paula?
Yeah, I can't tell if my screen is working or not. It's really
great.
Dark in my house tonight. But anyway, thank you everybody for joining. I'm Paula Plant. I'm the director of the School Children's Trust section. And I've been involved with school community council since before they were actually called school community councils, and followed my youngest son through till he graduated. And I'm happy to still be involved with school community councils at this level. Welcome and thank you. A special thank you to everyone on this meeting, because I know oftentimes you get to be the chair because you drew the short straw. So thank you. Thank you for being willing, and thank you for your service.
All right. And thank you all of you who put yourselves in the chat, introduced yourselves. My gosh, we've got someone who've been serving 15 years. I'm really going to rely on all of your expertise. Those of you who've been doing this for a while. That is wonderful. We've got Julianne from Centerville. South Jordan Middle is represented. We've got Malia from Kaysville. Lots of junior highs today. That's awesome. Amy at the high school. And Sydney, thank you all for joining us, and thank you for being here tonight and taking your Tuesday evening. And I'm really excited to hear about your experiences and what you have to share today. So today we're going to go over a kind of more in-depth training. So this is really targeted for those of you who are chairs or co-chairs and who are going to be running these. So this is kind of with an expectation that you have some understanding of what a school community council is. So if you have no idea, this might be a little bit over your head, but I have a few trainings I would suggest that you can look at later to kind of catch you up. Thank you, Kelly from West Jordan. So great to see you. So today we're going to talk about what are the requirements of a school community council chair and what are your responsibilities throughout the year. But in addition, we would also really like to talk about what are some helpful tips and ideas for making sure that you're working smarter and not harder, because I'm sure for a lot of you, especially if this is your first time, it's a little bit overwhelming and a little bit scary. And so we just want to help make sure that you feel empowered and you feel like you have a network of people to rely on and to ask questions, and that it's okay to ask questions and it's okay not to know what you're doing. Natalie went and put the other training videos in the chat. So there is a School Community Council 101 training that's on YouTube. That would be a great overview for kind of how the School Land Trust program began and kind of what are some of the basic structures of these councils. So that's a really great place to start. And then we also held a School Community Council member training a couple of times this week and last week. And those will be YouTube videos next week, and those will come out to you in an email. So be on the lookout for those. All right. As always, please answer or ask questions as we go along. You can always put them in the chat or just shout out. We're really here to answer your questions and to make sure you feel like you get your questions answered tonight. So don't be shy. Okay, so a few other places you can go for resources. This is our website. We are part of the Utah State Board of Education, and so we have a website there on their page. There's a few different resources you can find there. There are links to old trainings, so lots of different kinds of trainings that you can find there. There's templates for a few things that we'll talk about in a few minutes, as well as other things that I'll introduce as we go on, but that's a great place to have bookmarked. Also, we are starting to send out monthly newsletters to everyone who is on your school community councils. So that's you, the principal, all of your members. These newsletters will come to your email. So we get your email addresses from your principal. They have to enter those onto our website. And so if your principal hasn't done that yet or has had issues doing that, or if you're brand new, if you just had your elections, it might not have come to you yet, but be on the lookout for that in November. We can also provide a link to that newsletter in the chat if you didn't get it in October. But on that newsletter, we'll have links to the videos. We'll have the recordings of these trainings if you want to go back and watch them. Also places to sign up for additional training, as well as celebrating and highlighting schools and councils who are doing really cool things and that we just want to share and to provide some ideas. Okay, so yeah, some people didn't get the newsletter. So we'll put a link right here. If you don't get it by the second week of November, reach out to me in my email address and I'll see what's going on. I'll figure out why you're not getting it. Okay, so some of the videos that are going to come out, these will all be about 5 to 15 minutes long and should just be kind of a quick overview of a specific topic. So in this last newsletter, we sent out the School Community Council 101 video, as well as what needs to go on your website. We'll also send out videos about things like the school safety plan and the digital citizenship plans, as well as kind of how to put together your land trust plan as we get closer to that. So be on the lookout for these in each of the newsletters, as well as on our website and on YouTube. And just one more thing to kind of help stay informed and in the loop. We're partnering up with the USBE social media team. And so a lot of the resources that we're going to be pushing out will go through there as well. So especially follow them on Facebook and on Twitter. They're also on LinkedIn. I noticed they put the link to this training on LinkedIn. So just follow them and you'll get more of that information as well. Okay, so we're going to get started on the fun stuff. So what are school community councils and what is your job? The very heart of school community councils is creating a team between the community and parents and people who work at the school, and being able to create a mechanism for collaboration to make important decisions at the school level. And so the principal, the parents, and educators at the school all are working together to improve academic outcomes for students. So that really drives everything that you do, and should be kind of at the heart of all of your conversations. Now, your job as the chair or the co-chair is kind of just to make these conversations happen and to make sure that everyone feels involved and feels like they can have a part in this conversation. So your job is to facilitate the meetings, calling the meetings, so deciding when those meetings will be held, setting the agenda before each meeting, so deciding what's going to be talked about, conducting the meeting, and making sure that everyone feels ready to discuss, that they feel comfortable providing input, and then making sure that everything happens on time. And that's a lot. That feels a little overwhelming, I'm sure. But here's a few things you can do. You've got a whole team with you, right? All of your committee members or your council members can help you out and do a lot of these things. So on your first meeting or your next meeting, whenever that is, start giving assignments. Find somebody who can be a secretary and take the notes and the minutes. Find someone who understands money and can be your financial liaison. Find someone who's willing to update the website and work with the school personnel to update the website. So none of these jobs should be all yours. They should be things that you can share with your council members. So as far as what it is that you're going to talk about in each of your meetings, there's a few different things the legislature has given you all to discuss. First, it began with the school land trust program. That was kind of where these councils began. And so that's going to probably take up the bulk of your time. But the legislators were noticing that you guys were doing such a great job in councils and really creating a space for this collaboration between schools and communities. So they gave you additional responsibilities. How lucky. They also asked that you discuss school safety plans. So that means that you get to review the school safety plan that you have in place, and then also decide on one thing that you think you can do to make the school a safer place. And that really is a very broad definition of safety. That can be deciding to repaint the lines in the parking lot or getting new crosswalk guards. But it can also be things like mental health services, how you can support that, or things that you can put on the computers to help block harmful content, right? So think about safety in a broad sense and think of one thing that you as a council can do this year to support your students and make it a safer and happier place to be. Second thing that you can discuss, or you should be discussing, is the digital citizenship plan at your school. Now, this one, you don't have to do anything, but you should have a discussion with your principal about what the plan is. And as you look through the plan and you read through it, you can say, oh, it looks great. We have no questions, or you may have a few questions and they'll answer them. And you can say, oh, that looks great. And we can move on. So that just needs to be a conversation where you can provide your input as parents and community members. And then finally, there may be all kinds of things that you're asked to provide your input about. You really are the voice of the community and the voice of parents at your school. And so you may be tasked to advise the school board or your principal on any kind of subject that relates to your school. As long as you're not talking about individual teachers or individual kids, it's under your purview because you're supposed to be supporting the academic achievement of your students. So some conversations that you might have are things like bell schedules or start times. Those are kinds of things that are often brought. So yeah, those are, and also if there's anything that you feel like needs to be discussed, that can be put on the agenda and discussed and brought up. Again, as long as it's not an individual students or individual teachers, it's free game because it's meant to be supportive. All right. So as you saw in kind of that first slide about your responsibilities, a lot of what your job is running effective meetings. So first I want to hear from you, especially those of you who've been doing this for a long time. Think of an effective meeting that you've attended or ran recently. What made that meeting so effective? What were things that the leaders did or the members did to help make it run smoothly? So think about that for a second, and then I'm going to put you into breakout rooms so that you have a chance not only to discuss this topic, but also to get to know people who are doing the same job as you throughout Utah that you can get ideas from and reach out to. So think about this for a second. If you are not on Nearpod, you might want to screenshot this or just remember it. I would need to screenshot it. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and put you into breakout rooms. Okay. All right, it should be sending you an invite in just a second. You can go ahead and get started. And I'll give you 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Okay, I'm curious to hear, especially from those of you who had a great discussion. I'm sure that was all of you. From all of you, because you had a great discussion. What were some of the elements that you thought of as important for running an effective meeting?
Our group said sticking to an agenda was really helpful.
Yes. Why do you think that's so helpful? What about that helps run the meeting?
I just think being respectful of everybody's time and keeping focused is really helpful. Everybody here is a volunteer, and it's important to respect their time and lives too.
I think that's so important because you're exactly right? We're all volunteering. I'm not, but you all are volunteering and you're coming and you are making time for this really important thing. And so being sure that you get to talk about all of the important things in their time and place, and then also leave on time so you can get back to your lives is important. You can also, if you aren't keen on shouting out, you can put them into the Nearpod right here and they'll share with everyone else. But what are some of the other important things for running a meeting? See, Melanie.
I raised my hand. Do you like that?
You're so great.
Okay. So I loved our group. We actually had a principal in ours, so that was helpful too. But there were several things. So we talked about following agenda too, but redirecting people, having a pre-meeting with the principal, or I work with the vice principal a lot, but having a pre-meeting beforehand so that we're on the same page and can kind of keep things flowing without being, I think sometimes you can get contentious if you're on a different whatever. And then going over if there's a lot of data points and facts and stuff, sending those out beforehand so that everyone has a chance to look at them and you don't have to spend so much time going over that exactly, you can go through that quicker. And then keeping it business-like, maybe not such a casual meeting, but in order to make it go a little bit quicker, but just keeping things flowing. So those were things. And
those are awesome. Those are some great suggestions. Thanks for sharing those out. There was also one of the comments was establishing a time frame for the meeting and agenda items. Absolutely. And I think giving each agenda item a certain amount of time so that you're all kind of in that pre-meeting could really help with that. How long do you think it'll take to talk about this issue and this issue? So everyone's kind of on the same page. That's great. And Amy's comment to start the meeting with a round of introductions. That's so important. I think when you're all volunteers and you're all trying to create this coherent conversation, that also helps with giving assignments if you know what everyone's strengths are and what their backgrounds are. So thank you from Amy's group for that one. Any other thoughts, comments? Okay.
Just seconding, doing the homework between meetings is really, really useful. So we get to spend more time in thoughtful and useful discussion, like productive discussion, as opposed to reviewing stuff that could have been reviewed beforehand, out of class. And again, my group uses Slack so that we can share information and links and all this different stuff, and facilitate conversation outside of meetings. So yeah, do the homework at home.
I love that. And that was something that we talked about in our other training yesterday about using Slack or other platforms to kind of gather all that information. So it's in one place so that you can go back and refer to it and do that on your own time and then have that really productive meeting time. They're all great. Okay, so you guys hit most of these. So on a big study that, well, it wasn't a big study, but the New York Times did a big thing with a bunch of CEOs to say, how do you run effective meetings? And consistently, these were the things that everyone said. Same thing as what you guys said. Set an agenda, make sure you're respecting everyone's time, get there on time and end on time. And to be sure to end with an action plan. Make sure everyone knows what their jobs are so when they leave the room, things will actually get done before the next meeting. So do your homework at home, right? You know what your homework is. And then that bonus is kind of make sure everyone has a job and so that everyone feels like they have ownership over the meeting and over the conversation and that they can be productive in that process. And that also helps you because then you have less that you have to do, right? If everyone else has a job. Okay, so a few of the things to help you with this process. just like Melanie said, meeting with the principal or the vice principal or whoever it is that you interact with most of the school to set that agenda about 2 weeks before is really helpful. And that can be a virtual or an in-person, whatever works for both of you. And then because it is required by law, you need to set the agenda and have that posted on the website at least a week in advance before your meeting. And that's because you all are elected officials, technically. And so you represent your community, and the meetings that you have are community meetings that anyone can come to and be a part of. And so allowing the public to know what's going to be talked about and to know what's been talked about at earlier meetings is just part of that kind of democratic process that really engages the whole community and makes this feel like it's democratic, right? In the whole community. So have that agenda set early and have the meetings or the minutes from the previous meeting ready to go on the website as well. And then, like Reed said, have all of the links or documents that you might be reviewing or looking at, having those out to everyone early so that they have time to look at that before your next meeting. Couple of things you might want in your agenda. So if you've never done an agenda before, here's a few things that you should definitely have. Have the date, the time, and the location of the meeting. Now you can have both a physical place and a Zoom link. That's probably the best for a lot of schools, or it can just be a physical location or just a Zoom link. What things you're going to be talking about and how that kind of fits into a larger plan. What things are coming from council members, so who's going to discuss what, so you can have the assignment next to the topic, as well as reports back. So once you've started to give assignments to other council members, again, have them report back how they've done it or if it's been done, and then assign a time to each discussion item, and then identify possible action items. So what are things that you might need to decide on at this meeting to move forward? And just a couple other notes about meetings. It has to be open to the public. So there can't be any kind of closed session meetings. Sometimes school boards do that, but you guys don't have that. Everything is open to the public. And then everything should be published on the website a week in advance. So that is the agenda, where and when your meeting will be held. So a notice, where and when, and then the minutes from the previous meeting. All right. Are there any questions about that? Okay, there is a separate video on YouTube about the website requirements. If you have any questions about that, about what exactly has to go on the website, there is a video about that on YouTube, and feel free to ask questions. Okay, then the actual meeting, and that can also be really intimidating if you've never done that before. One of the things that we stress on our end, and that is also legally required, are to have rules of order and procedure. These are just a set of essentially norms for how your committee or your council is going to be run. And so it'll discuss kind of all the what ifs about running the meetings, about holding elections, about having people come and speak to the meetings. And so that if anything strange happens or unexpected, you have that plan in your back pocket of what to do. A couple other things that are helpful are just learning a little bit about parliamentary procedure. The Roberts rules are like a huge book. You don't need to know all of that, but you should know some basic ones. And we have some examples of those that we'll show you. That you can rely on to kind of just help keep that meeting business-like, right? That it was brought up. So the rules of order and procedure, like I said, are just kind of those norms for how you're going to run your council. We have on our website a template that you can just go online, download that. All the highlighted parts are parts that you need to fill in or change. So you can't just take it wholesale, but read through it, make sure it makes sense to you, that it applies to your council and your situation. And then put that on your website so that anytime there's a question, you can refer people there. And you don't have to be the bad guy that way. And this is required whether you are a charter school or a district school. You need to have rules of order and procedure. So some of the things that you might want to cover that we would advise are elections. So how are your elections going to happen? So how will you notice the election? What kind of publicizing will go on before an election to let people know? Is it going to go out to every parent's email? Is it going to be a poster at the school? Is it going to be on the website? Some combination? Just let people know. And then also what time of year? Some schools have theirs in spring and some have them in the fall, and that should be consistent. Every year it should be the same. Your district may also say when you should have those. In fact, they should probably tell you. But if they haven't, you should decide and put those into the rules of order and procedure. Also, another one that we've gotten lots of questions about this year is how many seats are available. So that needs to be set in your rules, how many parent seats are available from year to year. And that just makes sure that it is consistent and fair. And it also supports you in case there's any kind of questions or debacle of any kind that you can point to the rules and say, well, this is how many we allow each year. If you need to change it as a council, once people are voted in, you can vote on that and change that through a formal procedure through your council. But it's not going to be changed like willy-nilly based on the really popular person running, right? It should also discuss like what happens if there's a tie. So how you decide if there's a tie between people running. And then any other kind of what ifs. I think for a lot of school community councils, there hasn't really been a need for this throughout the years because it was kind of maybe under the radar and nobody really wanted to run. I think this year for a lot of schools, this is the first year that maybe several people ran or there were some hard feelings about some of the elections. So those schools that had rules of order and procedure that explained these really were grateful that they had them. 9 times out of 10, you don't need them, but the one time that you do, you're going to be grateful that you have them. Other things, so membership. So how many people can be members? And if you remember from some of our other trainings, there needs to be a majority parents. So how many voting parent members you have, how many teacher members you have, and then of course the principal. But that doesn't mean that you can't have other parents participate. There's other ways for parents to meaningfully participate. One, all of the meetings are always open to the public. So everyone can come and attend. You can even open up and have those people comment during the meeting if you feel that that's appropriate as chair. Other ways you can get them involved is by creating task forces. So maybe you want to you're looking at safety and you're looking at getting the parking lot repainted. You can create a task force of some of the members as well as some of the other community members. And they don't have to be members of the council to be on that task force. And then they can go and research that and then report back to the council. And then you can also have people, especially if they run and don't make it or they apply too late, they can be alternates. So they're there at all the meetings and they are listening and paying attention. And then if someone has to drop out of the council, you have someone ready to take their spot who's already up to date and it won't be behind. So those are some ways to get people involved. If you have more people wanting to participate, then you have space. Your rules of order and procedure should also talk about what are the roles and responsibilities. So what is everyone agreeing to, especially for new members? That's really helpful. What to do if someone doesn't show up? How many times can a person just not show up? And then also how to talk about conflicts of interest. Again, 9 times out of 10, you don't really need this, but the one time you are going to want this. If someone, say, works for a curriculum development company, right? And you're thinking about purchasing that curriculum for the school as part of your plan, you're going to want to make sure that everyone is aware that someone actually works for the company, right? So how you're going to talk about those things. And then finally, making sure that your rules and your norms for the agenda and for how meetings go are also in the rules of order and procedure. One important one, so you need to have a quorum vote, and that is a majority. So that's kind of one of those Robert's rules things. You need to have a majority of your council be there for any meaningful votes that you take. Also, any kind of timeline of topics. So usually in November, we're going to talk about this. In December, we usually talk about this. That gives everyone kind of an overview of how the year will go. And then another one that comes up often, or I get questions about, is how to deal with side conversations. Again, this just kind of makes it so that you don't have to be the bad guy. You can say, this is our rules for how we deal with people who are constantly talking on the side during our meetings, you know, and causing distractions. So just a few things that you might want to include. Let's see, make sure there's another question. This is a good question. I'm going to come back to this question at towards the end because that's a great one. Okay, so parliamentary procedure feels super formal, super hard to do if you've never done this before. But just think of it as, you know, the norms, those sentence starters. At least when I was a teacher, we'd always have sentence starters for how to, you know, talk about tough things. And it felt really uncomfortable at first, but as we practiced, it got easier and we all appreciated it. So kind of think of it like that. Some of the important parts of parliamentary procedure are just to focus on one item at a time, to really follow that agenda, and don't, if a conversation starts to drift off into another topic, say, you know what, we're staying in this agenda item. We're not moving off of this until we officially move on. It also makes sure that everyone is given the opportunity to participate in ways that are comfortable for them. It observes the rule of majority, right? Because you don't move on to something else until the majority feels like we're ready for that. We voted on the action item, we're ready to move on. You can't see it here because it got cut off, but it also ensures the right of the minority because everyone gets a chance to discuss and to meaningfully participate, even if, you know, their decision wasn't the decision everyone made, their voice is heard and it's in the minutes, right? And so it's preserved. So another couple of hints about how to do parliamentary procedure easily, maybe the cheat sheet, is kind of dividing up your agenda into action items versus information items. Typically the information items come first, and then you have things that you have to vote on or make decisions about second. And that just kind of helps the flow of the meeting. Always just make sure one person is speaking at a time. And then when you're making those actions, when you're deciding on things, someone makes a motion to take the action. So they say, I move to, and then do it. And then someone seconds it, and then everyone votes. And if you're the person taking the minutes or whoever's taking the minutes, make sure that they write down who made the motion and who seconded it, and then what the vote was. That's a really important thing to have in your minutes. So these are all things I did not know until I had to run my first meeting that way. So, okay. So a few other things for your first meeting. I don't know how many of you have already had your first meeting, but if you haven't done some of these things, this could be a great thing to discuss. Someone brought this up earlier, but make sure you introduce every council member and get to know them, what their strengths are, what perspective they're bringing to the group, and how they can share. And that can really look like work experience, but it can also look like their life experience, right? Their community building experience, a really broad definition of how they can contribute. And then a couple other things to do during that first meeting, or to do this soon, is to decide on when everyone's going to get trained. And if people have not yet been trained, you can direct them to our videos. Your district might have other resources that you might want to share. Set a meeting schedule. This should also be on your website of when you're meeting throughout the year. That can change. Things come up, you know, unexpectedly, and you can always just make an announcement and change that on the website, but have a rough idea of when you're meeting every month. You might want to review the plan from last year that the last year's council put together. Make sure somebody's updating the website, and then again, getting to those rules of order and procedure, having someone review them. That can be as somebody's job that you give them to look over them and see if it's what you guys want them to be. They make sense still. Okay, so switching gears just a little bit. So that's part of your job, is running the meetings and making sure that they're fair and democratic. But another way that you are representative of the community is by really engaging the community and making sure that people feel welcome and feel like they're invited into this process. So some of the ways that we've identified that you can do this, and I'm sure you have lots more ideas, and I would love to hear those, are to make sure that there are language services if you need them. So a lot of your schools already do this for PTA meetings and for parent meetings, But if you need translators or interpreters, if you need documents translated, talk to your principal and see what resources are available for making that more approachable for families. Also, consider your meeting time. You can set that meeting time for whenever. We have schools that are really creative and they'll do an afternoon meeting one month and the next month they do it in the morning. So you don't have to set like one particular meeting time for the whole year. You want it to be consistent so that people can attend, but you also want to make sure that people's needs are met. So think about how your meeting time can be more inclusive for your community. And then also just greater communication in general. So we require, and the law requires, that you put all your information on the school website, but that might not be the best way to get in contact with a lot of your families. Maybe Facebook is better, or maybe you have an Instagram page, or maybe your principal sends out texts. So just kind of tap into the communication systems that you already have in place or you think might be useful. And you can be creative and you can kind of make this your own. This is really supposed to be community driven and local control. So yeah, if you have other ideas though, this is something we're always working on at the state level, is how we can make this more inclusive and more representative of our communities. Okay, that was a lot of talking on my end. Does anyone have any questions or anything we could?
Yes, I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Should we be meeting every month?
That's a great question. So there is not a set amount of times that you should meet. There's no requirement, only that you meet often enough that you can discuss all the things that you have to discuss. So we recommend monthly, and I would say most councils probably do, but there are councils that don't, especially in kind of rural areas where people have to travel a lot. They might only have them a few times and they'll have them longer, or they'll do a lot of that prep work more independently. And then when they come together, they're more making decisions. So it's really up to the needs of your council and your school and what works for you all, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions or anything? Casey.
Is there a minimum amount of meetings you're supposed to have a year? Because like we do ours quarterly. We're in a rural area.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but is there like a minimum amount that you're supposed to do?
Let me ask Natalie, is there? I have not come across that, but let me ask the experts.
Again, there's not a minimum or a maximum. It really just is how many meetings you need to have to get everything done. I think quarterly is great. Every other month is great, whatever fits your schedule. And again, on our website, we have some timelines so that you can see everything you have to do. And that might help you know when you know, how often you need to meet to make sure everything's getting done.
Thanks for those questions. Let's see, was there another one in the chat? Yeah, every other month, definitely. Rochelle, let's see.
Okay, so I'm very new to this, so sorry if this question is
No.
dumb, but so everyone's invited to the meetings, but are they all allowed to make an opinion, or are they all allowed to speak, or only, like, how does that work?
Great question. No, that is a great question. So the only people who can speak, and this is your job as the chair, is to decide who gets to speak. And so the people who are presenting obviously get to speak, and you can have discussion items where the council discusses, and that's all that has to happen. Those who are attending, correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie, but those who are just watching don't have to have a time where they get to participate, right? Okay, just making sure I'm on the right one.
You're 100%. Only the chair gets to decide who talks.
So just, you know, just revel in the power that you all have, being in charge. But you can open up, you know, to comment if you feel like that's appropriate and you feel like that's something that you're comfortable with. You can also, if you have someone who's been emailing you, right, and has an opinion, you can say, yeah, I'm going to give you 5 minutes of our agenda, come and talk to us and we'll discuss. Someone can also, if they bring something up in a meeting and it's not on the agenda, feel like you have the ability to say, you know what, that's a great point. we're going to talk about that, and maybe we'll put it on next month's agenda and we'll get back to you. So that's, this is all kind of in your power to decide who gets to talk and be present, but everyone should be able to come and listen. Does that answer your question, Rochelle?
It totally does. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And then there was one other question and I lost it already because I can't find the chat, that I loved. So many parents feel that things are working really well and they don't feel like they need to be on the school community council because of how it's going, and you don't have enough people to fill your election. You are doing nothing wrong, first of all. That is common enough throughout our state. I think especially before this year, that was something that happened at a lot of schools. And I think that that's fine and there's nothing wrong with it. Things that you can do, and I'll talk about this in a second. The best way, and research has shown this as far as family engagement goes, the best way to get other families involved is through you. That the principal can do a lot, teachers can do a lot, but the best way to get other families involved is if another family or another parent invites them. So by sharing what you're doing with the school community council, by sharing your successes, by sharing things that you've dealt with on the council, that might inspire others to say, oh, there are things that I can change. There are things that we can do better, or there's just ways I can serve. But you're doing nothing wrong, so don't feel like you are. Casey.
Yeah, I just had a comment on that.
Yeah.
I know with our area, we've had an issue with engagement, and it seems like the biggest issue is that the community as a whole doesn't know what SCC is or what they'd have to do, or like they don't know anything about it. And so maybe it's bad on our community end that we haven't. I mean, it's because like I was just voted in, this year, and I'm like, okay, so what is this? What am I doing? Like I wanted to help and participate, but I have no idea what I'm getting into. And so I think increasing that engagement in like layman's terms, and not that like, full page document that looks very legal that gets sent home. I think that would help maybe too.
That's definitely, I feel like I've been very involved in education for my whole career. And I had never heard of school community councils until not that long ago. And so I feel like that's absolutely true and something we can all work on. And if you have ideas for that, or if you have flyers that you find are really effective, or ways of doing this, please share them with us and we can share them out with everyone, because I think that's something that all districts are struggling with in their own way. I'm going to get really quick to the land trust portion, just the last few minutes. This is probably your biggest task that you have as a school community council. Oh, yes. So preparing the land trust plan. So in those other videos, we kind of discuss where this plan comes from, where the money comes from, what that needs to be. Here, I'm just going to talk about kind of what are some of the more nitty-gritty ideas for ways to make this work. So the first thing that you're going to do, because you need to create a plan that increases academic achievement at your school, right? So the first thing you need to figure out is, what do you want to do, right? So you want to review applicable data. Now, what applicable data means is really broad and is really up to you. So you can examine kind of satellite data is kind of sometimes what it's called, like the statewide data, how are kids doing on their state tests. But you can also get really fine-tuned and you can look at classroom assessment data, you can look at district assessment data, you can look at student surveys, climate surveys. This is really up to you what it is that you want to look at. Also invite specialists. You've got so many people at your districts or at your schools who are experts in some of these areas, in assessment and in interventions, in special education, in language development. Have them come in and talk to you about what they're seeing in the data and what solutions they would propose or ideas that they have. So you don't have to do this on your own. You guys are not educational experts. So have people come in, some of you might be, but have people come in and help you out. Also funding. So we give a portion of the state land trust fund to each school to fund their projects. And that's typically, I mean, that grows every year and that's a great fund, but it doesn't have to be your only funding source. So if you have a really great idea that you're really excited about as a council and you really want to get going, but it's going to cost more than what we're providing, you can look for additional funds. There are lots of schools that do this. They apply for grants or there's other things. Your principal probably knows of other funding sources, and feel free to look out for other areas to kind of bolster that fund that you have available. Okay, so after you've decided what you want to do and how you're going to pay for it, you need to be able to measure and see whether or not the thing that you wanted to do is actually increasing that academic achievement, right? So you want to establish a beginning point. So when are you going to start measuring progress? And then how are you going to measure that? And again, this is really up to you and should be local control. At my daughter's school, they actually do theirs from December to December. And that way, because that works better for their councils to actually see the progress rather than from school year to school year. And so, you can be, it doesn't have to just be end of school year data every year. You can be more creative and thoughtful. Also, you shouldn't be trying to think of assessments that you can then put into the schools. Schools are already doing a lot of kinds of assessments. And so tap into your teacher and your principal knowledge and find out what's already going on so that you can get some of that. And then after you've kind of figured out what the plan is, how you're going to pay for it, and how you're going to measure it, then you've got to send that to your district if you're a district school. And then it goes on to us for final approval. So the official way that that gets done is you have to have that plan presented in the meeting and then have that vote on it. So remember to have someone make the motion to approve it, have someone second it, and then everyone votes and then record that in the minutes. You all will sign a document that says that, yes, you did everything you were supposed to do. This is all according to the law, and you agree that this is the plan you want. Then if you're a district school, it gets sent to your school board and they look over it and make sure that it aligns with their district goals and their priorities. Sometimes they'll send it back to you for revisions and say, we like this portion, but can you tell us more about this? Then you fix it, send it back to them. Once they finally approve it, it comes to us. So your principal will upload it to our website and we'll take a look at it. If you're a charter school, you just skip that third step and it comes to us. I take a look at it. I'll get back to you with revisions and then it goes on for final approval. Once it's all approved, that usually is about the end of the school year, then we get to send the money to you and you get to get started. And then is the most exciting part, I think, is the actual execution of your plan and sharing it. You've worked so hard this whole year to get this plan in place. Your teachers are excited. The principal is hopefully excited. This shouldn't be the end, right? As it's implemented, you should be able as a council to be consistently looking and getting feedback on whether it's working. How is this working out? Especially when like COVID hit, sometimes things hit schools that are less than COVID that kind of mess with the plan. And so you have the ability to make amendments and to formally kind of tweak your plan a little bit if that's what you need to do. And as a council, that's up to you to kind of be aware of that and be watching for that. And then also share this information widely and wildly, but widely on your website, put it out on the social media for your school, share it with your local officials, right? The legislature is a big piece of making sure that this money keeps coming to schools. So sharing it with them so that they can be excited about the way that the money is being used. The more that you do to share your excitement and the things that are working, the more people are going to want to be involved. So, and then finally, you share a final report with us. And that final report just says, did it all go according to plan? If not, how come? And then did you spend the money like you said you did? And if not, how come? So that will come to us through your principal. Okay. We have about 5 minutes left. We can do this in breakout rooms, or I guess we could probably just do it here. We're small enough. We'll just do it here. So what are some of the successful things, if you've been part of the school community council before, what are some of the great things that you've done, good ideas that you have that you'd like to share? Or maybe what are some of the challenges that you've faced that you would like to share with others? And if you haven't been a part of them before, what are some of the questions you have? You can share them here or out loud.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So this is my first time ever being on it, and our community council usually has 5 community members. And this year there are 3 new ones of us. And the other 2 are heavily involved in the community. They're like on city council and things like that too. So we went to our first meeting and the principal just presented this land trust plan to us. And some changes, and they're all good. Like, it was a great plan. I don't think it was bad by anyways, but I didn't know what was going on. And then we were all like, yeah, that sounds great. And so we like signed it and sent it off. But when you talk, it sounds like it should be coming more from us. And so I don't know if it was because of the time of year. This was just in September that this happened. So I don't know if it was the time of year that's why this happened, or like what's the timeline for this land trust, I guess is what I'm asking.
So great. I'll answer just the timeline question right now. So that may have been an amendment, because the timeline is you should be looking at data around now through like December, early January, kind of coming up with a rough plan, January, February, and then it gets to your district probably around March, maybe first week of March, and then to us by May. So that's usually, and then the money gets rolled out in kind of the summertime. So it was probably an amendment that they had to make a change to last year's plan that they already did. Maybe not though. I saw some other hands. Were there other ideas though for how to deal with this kind of situation? Or Jill, did I see? There you are.
Oh, there I am. I couldn't get it to unmute.
Sorry.
Sorry. So I think, so I was the one that asked that one question about how we don't get a lot of participation. And I think it's because it's like a well-oiled machine. And I think the same thing's happening. I've been at this high school now. My oldest started the high school. He was there the first year. And now my youngest is a senior this year. So I've been on the school community council for many years. So I've seen that it's pretty much the same thing. And what that is that the principal comes up with a plan and says, what do you guys think? And we're all like, sounds great. They do all the work, which in a way is great, but at the same time, it doesn't give us that flexibility to try to use creative, like, well, use my imagination, like, wow, what if we tried this? So I love the fact that they're just so, like, they do the agendas, they do everything. They send it to me ahead of time so I know what's going to be on it. And I have reached out to my council and said, please talk to your community, to your neighborhoods, ask them what their concerns are. This is the time to talk about them. So I've been trying to be proactive that way, but really we don't get to do all what you're saying. It's pretty much a button down or tight ship. Should I say anything? Should I tell them, or should you just let it go?
I think I'm gonna let other people speak because a lot of you have a lot of experience, but one thing that you can do is use us as the bad guys. You can say, I recently went to a training and Elise and Natalie told me that, you know, we should be doing this. What do you think about that? And maybe kind of pushing things a little bit more that way. I saw other hands though. Do other people have ideas, thoughts on that? But Kelly?
Yeah, my school did the same thing. As far as the title plans and everything, and then my principal is going to be providing everything. We sit down the end of December, right before winter break, so she can give me everything to go over in the next meeting. But I don't believe that parents know that they have a voice as much as it's being said in this meeting.
Oh, you went. Kelly, you went mute. Miss you.
Oh, that was it. I'm done.
Oh, okay. No, I think you're right. I think that's something that I definitely hear. Jean, am I saying that right? Did you have a thought on that?
No, but that's okay. It's Jeannie.
Oh, Jeannie. Okay. No, I want to get it right.
No worries. So our SCC, this is my second year on it, first year's chair, and fortunately last year we had a better experience than what I'm hearing from the last couple of comments, where it was parent led, coming up with the agendas. My question and concern, though, I have always been led to believe or given the impression that the SCC's really sole purpose was to deal with the land trust and the TSSA money, and then choosing and vetting health sex ed programs. I am wondering, though, our school, we're a charter, we don't have a great involved parent group, and have been trying to brainstorm ways to make that happen. And I'm wondering if, as you said earlier, I can execute my amazing powers as chair and make this that outlet that we have been trying to find. Our administration is not open to having like town hall meetings or really engaging our parents much more. So I'm wondering if I can have this be a forum for parents to come and bring concerns to the table with the school, with the administration, with the board, whatever it may be.
That's a really great point. I am just really quickly, it is past 8 o'clock, so I want to be aware of your time. So if you need to go, just thank you for being here, and we're just so grateful for you, and we will send out more information in the next newsletter. But those of you that I want to continue on this conversation and want to be able to talk about this, so I will stay on as long as people are wanting to talk. And that was a great point, Jeannie. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Especially those of you at charter schools. What has kind of
also at a charter school, many of the same concerns. There's no PTA, right? There is instead the possibility of a PTO, which apparently we can't do in the Ascent group of schools, I guess. So there is a big question, and there are some initiatives and some ideas for the plans that require that. I mean, almost everything should have an element of community and parental involvement, but it's really tough when we don't actually know how to drive parent and community involvement. Again, as been mentioned before, most people are not even aware at all of what our community council does. We're also in the same question. How do we invite parent involvement? I think, Jeannie, it's a good point. It may be the only forum where we can invite parents to come and participate and listen is in the council meetings. That may be the most realistic place where we can invite comment and participation.
I think that that's one of the reasons why how meetings are run, besides a few legal requirements, it's really up to you how they're run, right? For some of these bigger schools and district schools especially, I think that keeping the parent and public comment part down, right, makes sense, because there's lots of other forums for parents to participate. In a charter school, it may make more sense to have a public comment period, or a place where you can gather those digitally and then address them in your meetings, right? Yeah, I think these are all great ideas, and they really are within your purview. Like I said, anything that is about the school and creating chances for academic achievement is within your purview. It doesn't have to be just the land trust plan. It can be anything that comes to mind. I know Paula's told stories about all kinds of things that they've done in their schools and their school community councils that were outside the school land trust, that was actually a smaller portion of what they did. I saw Pauline, was that another?
One of the things that we have done to try to get more input from the community, always on our agendas, it goes out to our community council to be able to put whatever they have heard from the community that they want to add to the agenda. So that agenda is formed by the whole council, is sent to the chairperson, and then we get that on the agenda. But we also wanted to include our teachers a lot more too. And so we've also sent surveys out to teachers asking what their needs are to be when we do that school improvement plan and distribute that funding. We want to make sure that the needs are met. And anyway, I had another thought and I totally lost it. So sorry.
Oh, thank you. I love that point, to have that agenda out early enough so that people have that space to include, and that obligation too. I know if I'm a school community council member and I know that I'm going to be given time to report back on what the community is saying, I'll probably be more motivated to go find out what they're saying, right? That's excellent. There's others, let's see, from the board. Our small school is not a charter, but we haven't had a PTO. We just started yesterday. Congratulations. Yeah, so the SCC is a great way to fill the needs of the school. And again, that doesn't have to be just the land trust and the money that you use. You know, you can find funding from other places as well. So if you have ideas that are outside of kind of the purview of the land trust, feel free to kind of bring those up. Other comments, I saw other people with hands, but didn't. And also Paula and Natalie, if you have other thoughts on this, I'd love to hear those as well.
I had a question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So this might be another dumb question, but is there a way for us to see other people's plans so that we can use those ideas as our own? I mean, we all want all schools to succeed, right? So we're not like jealously guarding our ideas, right?
Right. So no, and that is not a dumb question because that is asked often. So if you go to, why can I not find it? The USBE Land Trust. So our website, this is always dangerous doing it live. So right here at the top of the menu is the School Land Trust login. So that's our website where your principal goes in to like enter all this information, but there's a public facing piece. So if you click on that, Natalie just put it in the chat because she's incredible and is superhero. You can go to the public reports and search by school, and you can look at everyone's plans. So you can look at your school's former plans. You can search it by district or charter. You can click on them and see their past plans. You can see any school's plans. I've read through a whole bunch at this point. And gotten ideas for all the kinds of things that schools are doing. And this is a great way to kind of brainstorm. Another thing that came up yesterday in a training is there was actually a school community council Facebook page started by a member of the PTA, state PTA. So that's hopefully a great place. I just signed up and joined that one. So I'm going to put some announcements over there. But you can join that and ask questions. There's been some great responses over there, I've noticed. So that's another place. Are there any other ideas? Those were my two that came to mind.
The What Works Clearinghouse thing was pretty cool, the website.
Oh yeah, so at the federal level, the education department at the federal level, they have researchers that go through kind of all of the programs that are available to schools and have created a What Works Clearinghouse. And they basically rate every kind of program or intervention and its effectiveness and give direction to like, who is this ideal for, what time of year, like all the kinds of details that you would want to know. So if you're looking at like, we want to do a reading intervention for third graders who are learning English for the first time, you can go and search that on the What Works Clearinghouse and kind of see what some of the data is on the different programs you have available. So thank you, Reed. He put that in the chat so you can take a look at that. Jeannie, did you have another question? No? Yes? I can never tell with the hands. Okay. Any other ideas about how to share good plans, good strategies, or other questions generally that you might have? Okay. All right, well, I will continue to be in touch. We'll be sending out that November newsletter next week with recordings from this training, as well as other trainings that we're doing. But if you ever have questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. My email and Natalie's email and Paula's email are all on our website. And also there is a link, sorry, in the chat along with all the amazing links to an evaluation survey just to help us know how useful this was to you, how we can make it better and better serve you. So thank you again for being here and thank you for all that you do. You are all wonderful and good luck as chairs.
One more thing real
Yeah.
quick, sorry, that before you went to the Nearpod comment page, you had a slide up with the timelines through the year with
Yes.
can you put that back up so I can
Yes, I
screenshot it real
can.
quick? Thank you.
So those, just to clarify, are our deadlines. So if you're at a district school, they're actually going to be earlier than this for the March 1st and the May 15th deadline because you need to get them done in enough time for your school board to approve them. But on
Okay.
October 1st is when like the principal has to update all the stuff and you need to update your website. So that's already passed. And if you haven't done it yet, check on that. March 1st is when the final report is due to us. So that's last year's plan, how that went. And then on May 15th to us is when the plan is due.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Are we in charge of that final report, even if we were not on the committee when they started it, or does the principal do the final report?
The principal usually handles most of it. He may come to you for approval to go over it, but there's not much that you would need to do for that. Any other questions or anything?
Can I just ask a
Yeah.
specific question to me? Is
Yes.
that okay? So I chair at our elementary and I wanted to join our high school community council, but they never sent out an election option for new incoming parents. They just let the existing parents come. So I would like to be on the email list when they send the agenda because they keep changing the date and not notifying parents. Is that legal for them to put me on the same email list as the community council correspondence?
That's a good question. I've never thought of. Natalie, do you have any thoughts? I don't see why not, but
I don't think that's a problem at all. And also they really should get their act together. If you have your elections in the spring, you need to make sure that incoming parents can participate. And they didn't do that, but maybe next year when you're on the council, you can remind them. Another thing is they need to be putting all of that on the school website as well. So hopefully they'll get their act together and do that, but also they can add you. There's not any legal problem from our perspective for that to happen.
the legal problem is in not updating the website.
I know. I have told them, and I don't want to be a nuisance to them. I just want to attend meetings and they keep changing the date. So if I can ask to be on their master list, I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay, one more question. Sorry.
Yeah.
So members, I mean, how many members can there be? It just has to be a majority of parents versus teachers?
So the minimum is 4, right? Because you have to have 2 more parents and you have to have 1 principal and at least 1 teacher, right? So in order to have a full majority, a 2% majority.
Okay, so you just at least have to have 4.
Yep. But beyond that, I don't think there's a maximum. Right?
I know, I'm like, well, why can't they add her on there? Like I would add her on there.
Well, that's what we talked about earlier, because it's not in the rules of order and procedure, right? So if they just, we have to be really careful with councils just adding people on, because then someone could say, well, why did you add her on, but not me? Or,
okay.
Yeah, so that's why, I mean,
I
what they really do need to
procedures
get their elections going correctly, but so we're going to make sure that our rules of order and procedure have set sizes of councils in them.
Okay, so we don't just I mean, and I think for ours, as people show up, we're like, okay, you're now a member, and we put them on as a member, but that's not what you do, right?
So that would be,
I mean, I'm just new to
if
chair,
you-
by the way.
If you had like a spot open, if someone had moved or had stopped coming and asked to no longer participate, then the parents are supposed to fill that spot with another parent. So that's appropriate.
That's appropriate. Okay, good. All right, thanks. Sorry.
Those are great questions. Thanks for clarifying. Right. Any others?
Good.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to let
Thank
you all
you.
have your night. Thank you all for being here and thanks for your great questions and participation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elise.
Good night,
Thanks, Natalie.
everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.